Officer Yo, it's great having you here today.
Oh,
Thank
good
you
to
so
see
much.
you, Jimmy. You
You
bet.
too, buddy.
You bet.
It's been a long time that
Yes, it
we got to
has.
sit down and talk. But one of the things that we're trying to do is really engage with the community, and I want to bring back individuals that worked here in the past and that really connected with the community, and that's really important. For our officers to see the past and the honor what officers did before them and here. So just tell everybody that I know a lot of people in the community know you, or we're going to reintroduce you to the community. When did you start with the Northglenn Police Department?
I started in 1972.
How many officers for Northglenn at that time?
There wasn't very many, Jimmy. There was, I believe there was 18 to 20 of us.
Okay.
At that time. We had, at that time, Northglenn was split up into 4 districts, 2 districts on the east side of I-25, 2 districts on the west side of I-25. Most generally, on a fortunate day, we had 1 officer on the east side of I-25, and then the other officer on the other side of I-25. As I said, if it was a fortunate day, we have a cover car to cover those 2 officers. It was fun.
So minimum staffing was 2 back then for the whole city.
I can remember my very first call in the city of Northglenn, and I was totally frightened. My first call was a barking dog on 115 block of Claude Court. I didn't know whether to run red light and siren. I didn't know whether to go there and pull my gun out, whether somebody's breaking into the house. I was totally scared. And then when I finally got there, I finally got my wits together, and everything went okay from then. But I can remember my very first call. And I'm sure that's what every recruit goes through when you're solo and you got your first call. How are you going to handle that no matter what it is?
What was the biggest thing happening in Northglenn back in the early 1970s?
As far as crime is concerned, there was criminal trespassing, breaking into cars. There were second-degree burglaries, breaking into homes. The most interesting item that perpetrators wanted was the CB radios, 8-track cartridges.
8-track tapes.
Yeah, 8-track tapes, and then there was cassettes. Violations such as that, of course, at that time we thought it was major because it was happening on a regular basis.
So a lot of changes in Northglenn from the time you started to the time you retired, and even today. I think the Northglenn Mall was up and running at that time, right?
Yes, when I first hired Jimmy, the patrol division was housed out of the basement of the Northglenn Mall.
Oh my goodness.
The chief of police and his command staff were housed at the Melody building on 104th and Melody. Soon after that, we'd moved to our new police department, which everybody was very happy with. It was a big kingdom, if you will. We moved to 10969 Irma Drive, and at that facility we had kind of a hallway, what we call the briefing room or the bay area, where we wrote our reports and so on. We had at that time kind of a closet that housed our arrestees, and we didn't have much facilities for that, but our briefings mainly were completed in that small corridor. We had our own dispatch center, our own dispatchers. We drove the old Ford Torinos, big boats, and I really felt that I could run faster than them Ford Torinos. But it was sufficient. It got us around to what our needs were. And soon after that, not very long after that, we began to grow, and we were fortunate to begin to hire more officers and so on. And then we moved to 11701 Community Center Drive in Northland. That building seemed like heaven. We had writing rooms, we've had interview rooms, we had a big evidence storage area. We had
Holding facility.
a holding facility. My goodness, it was big conference rooms. It was just a wonderful area to go to work. Gave us a lot of enthusiasm to go to work at that time.
So when I started in '92 and Gundy hired me, you were a DARE officer, and I believe you were our first DARE officer, right?
Yes. Started the DARE program in North Glen, and I was hounding Chief Gunderson for several years about trying to place a police officer in every school building. It took me a long time to convince him. The DARE program throughout the nation began, and I jumped on that bandwagon as fast as I could, because I felt that this was my calling and this was my opportunity to have more convincing momentum for the chief of police to place a police officer in every school building. It was not only DARE that I was teaching, it was befriending a young girl, a young boy, in hopes to gain their trust, gain their respect, and to spread that not only just to me, but to the entire police department. One of the goals was to know the community, because I didn't know what I had in the community. I didn't know who lived in the community, and so on. So I set a goal for myself to get to know a resident on the east side and one on the west side. And I built off of that. I wanted to know who they were, what kind of work they did, who the kids were in the family, how many kids, what cars they drove, who were the friends of the kids, what are the hours of everybody, when I could depend on everybody being home safe. I felt that was important to me, because it helped me in my police investigations.
So what recommendations would you have for young officers coming into the field and how to have longevity in this career?
That's a difficult question, and that's one that I've been pondering for over 50 years. I had some complaints against me, believe it or not. I did, and I wasn't worried too much about the complaint to begin with, because if you do good, if you have good intentions, if you try to have a disposition at the lowest level possible, you shouldn't have to worry. But the work that I did with the community in assisting them and helping them, one of the rewards I got back was the public would come in and said, no, that didn't happen. I was there, I witnessed it, and this is what truly happened. So that's the reward you can get in knowing your community. Work with the entire police department, work with other personnel. If I didn't know the answer, I can assure you that I could find somebody within the police department that knows a better way and knows the answer, and I wouldn't have to beat my head up against the wall. So rely on each other, trust in each other. And one other thing that is very, very important to me, as I found out in many ways, be very open with your supervisor, your commanders. Don't be afraid to show them who you really are, what your strengths are. Tell them what your weaknesses are. Don't be afraid to do that, because they have to make a decision on you at some time or another. And the more they know about you and how you are, the better disposition they can have for you. I'll give you an example. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and when I joined the police department, I didn't know anything about law enforcement. And one of the questions that the chief asked me on the one-to-one interview, he asked me, tell me what you know about law enforcement and why you want to be a police officer. And I said, Chief, I'm sorry, but I don't know one thing about law enforcement other than somebody walking around in a uniform and carrying a badge and putting handcuffs on somebody. You're going to have to teach me the rest. I'm sorry, I don't know. Be very honest, because it has more rewards than trying to show the fact that maybe you want to shine a better light on you than what is. Just be honest. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I received a DOA call, a death in the family. And I walked into the house. Mom and Dad were in the main living room or receiving room, hugging and crying each other. And the father pointed to upstairs. He's upstairs in his bedroom. I walked into the bedroom, it was a baby crib. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this is a SIDS death or an infant death. And I walked over to the crib, and I felt like I hit a brick wall. This person had no arms and no legs. He was a Vietnam vet, same age as me. He's never been married, never worked a job in his life other than the military. And all his medical consequences came from Vietnam. That hit me like a sledgehammer. And I walked down and I met my supervisor. I had flashbacks. I had a PTS moment, if you will. And by my sergeant knowing me, how I was and so on, he said, absolutely, go home. Can I give you a ride home? Or, you know, he was very forthcoming and helping me with that matter. So that's the rewards of depending on your supervisor. But there's one main thing that I have wrestled in my mind for years when I see a new police officer on the street. And that's this: the day that you raised your hand and took a sworn duty and promised to service and to protect, and your wife or your family pinned a badge on you, or your chief of police pinned a badge on you, you became a different person. You were no longer a private person. With the devices that they have in this day and age, cameras, cell phones, long distance hearing devices, microphones, you're always on site. You're always in view of the public. You may not see the public, but they see you. So just remember that. Your duty is to the police department. Your duty is to the community. Your duty is to that person you're dealing with. I couldn't live with myself if I tarnished badge in any way. All that work would be down the drain. I would lose respect. I would lose respect with my fellow police officers in blue. I would lose respect with the people that I've retired with. I would lose respect with my family. I would, the courts, I would lose it all. So remember, the day you pinned they pinned the badge on you, think about what you can do to yourself and to your family and to your fellow officers. The city of Northland, if you tarnished that badge, what would you do to them?
one thing too I want to let everybody know is that while you were here, you received quite a few awards, and I know of several. You received the Adams County Officer of the Year Award, and then you also received National Officer of the Year Award. That's actually in the copy of that on a metal plate is in our museum outside. I don't want to say that
Sure.
I put you in a museum, but you know that incident is part of our history, and you know we really want to celebrate that. So
Sure.
talk about that. Was that done in the same year? Was it the same incident or circumstances?
I would say yes, but if not all within one of a 2, maybe year period of each other. And that was just for the work that I had done with the communities and so on.
I know you have the Medal of Valor, and you received that while you were on a special within a special unit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, Jimmy. That was the SWAT team. I was with the SWAT team for 10 years. When the SWAT team first organized, it was a joint effort between Thornton Police Department and the North Glen Police Department. I was a sniper. I was trained in the military as a sniper, and I figured, well, you know what, I could finally be of use. I could use that training. We had a suspect barricaded in a house on one call, and this is when I got the award. He would come to the door, open up the door, and just reach out with his hand and shoot at random, and so on. I was across the street in a house with the front door wide open. I was in a prone position in the dark, so he couldn't see me. And I could always tell when he was going to do that because he would always look out a window, pull the curtain back, and I could see the curtain, and I could see him for seconds, not even seconds. And I could give a radio acknowledgement that he's going to open up the door, and sure enough he did, and so on. He continued to shoot all afternoon and all the evening. And finally, Chief Gunderson gave us a green light. I decided to, if he was going to come to the door, he was going to shoot. And I decided, well, I'm not going to allow that door to open. So I told my spotter, I said to him, keep an eye on that curtain. And if you see that curtain move, I'm going to take a shot and at least maybe get a wound. There's nobody else in the house, nobody around. And sure enough, that happened, and I did. Well, evidently I hit him. It wasn't a deadly shot or hit. It was just a graze, and I think I grazed him, after the fact investigation, I grazed him in the neck, and that threw him back. And he never did come to the door again. That standoff lasted somewhere in the area of 24 hours minimum. We had to be relieved by the Denver SWAT team, Adams County SWAT team, and then we were back on the scene, and Thornton was there. I remember laying in the front living room in this house across the street. He had shot at me, and he had hit the front doorstep. If he would have been 2 inches higher, he'd have probably got me right between the eyes. And all the other officers had similar situations, just missed them by inches. And so we all received the Medal of Valor for that situation. There were other awards that I got, Jimmy, but I think most of those awards were situations that I was trained to do, and I was just doing my job.
We've been talking now for a couple of years, and just recently, I'm aware that your missions in Vietnam, a lot of them were classified.
Yes.
Right, and they just started unclassifying that some of those missions several years ago. Tell us what your job was in the in the Vietnam War if you're up to it. I don't want to put you in a spot, but I know some of the stories and everything else, and I don't expect you to go there. We might talk about one, but what did you do when you were in Vietnam?
My original assignment in Vietnam, I was trained to be a weapons specialist and a weapons mechanic. So most domestic weapons I could work with, repair or simulate. That developed into me being a helicopter gunner, in which turn they assigned me to a unit that was what they call a special operations group. And what that group did was supported the 5th Special Forces recon element. We did missions in Laos and Cambodia and North Vietnam. I flew over 5,000 missions in Southeast Asia. One mission, I believe, I flew in Vietnam itself. But in those 5,000 missions or so, I seen a lot of destruction, a lot of death, mangulation, and total carnage. But what kept me going as I was going through those episodes was the fact that somebody is out there, somebody needs help. I need to bring them back, and no matter what shape they are. We assisted the recon elements of the 5th Special Forces in gathering of information, troop movements, obtaining prisoners. I know there were a couple of generals that we had captured. We obtained information of where a lot of the POW camps were being positioned. The Vietnam veteran was well known for using marijuana or drugs out on the field and so on. Our unit didn't. We had to be in full awareness. We had to be in full capabilities, both mentally and physical at all times, because we just didn't know what our next mission was going to be. My orders came from Washington, D.C. or the CIA. Very few missions did I fly for the Air Force or even for the Army. It was wherever this special group was needed, we went.
Because of your actions and what you did in Vietnam, you were nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest award in our country for military personnel. And when I first heard that, I got goosebumps because knowing you and knowing how you served this community and with such honor, and finally after 50 plus years, 60 years, finally your work, because it was classified, is finally being recognized. And I was asked to write a letter of your character, and I was honored to do so. Could you do you know the event or the mission that you were nominated for, and would you mind talking about or giving a brief?
March 13th, 1969, when we went in, and there was supposedly a company of NVA, and the team that we had just put in were compromised and in contact heavily with the enemy. And our assignment was to go in there and assist them and pick them up and bring them back. We did, but on the way in, we received heavy ground fire. One round went in the captain's cockpit door, went to the door, went through the pilot. The round went through the pilot's leg, came out, and it hit the co-pilot right between the armor vest underneath his armpit, killed him instantly. And my pilot was complaining that he was about ready to pass out. He was losing a lot of blood. And I went from my gun position, pulled the dead pilot out of the helicopter, the co-pilot seat, and I put myself in a position to control the helicopter, which I did. I just was begging my co-pilot, don't pass out because I can't fly this thing. And he was telling me basically what to do and so on. And I did it for about 5 clicks, which was about 5 miles, I guess a little over 5 miles. And there was what we call a fact bird, which is a bird that controls the mission and tells us where to go. He was telling me bank left for 10 seconds, bank right, and so on, and go straight, fly, keep going straight for another 10 seconds, and so on. He said, you're going to come up on a clearing in about 8 to 10 seconds, and I'll let you know when you're there. And understand we were flying over the jungle. It's about a 300-foot canopy. And our helicopter was on fire. It was a big flame following us. And the FAC above, he hollers, you're at the clearing, drop down. Of course, I just dropped the collective and I dropped everything and we went down. We hit pretty hard and so on. We were still receiving fire from the enemy, and I managed to get the wounded pilot out. My other gunner was assisting me as best he could. He was wounded, and I had to carry the pilot about 150 to 200 yards. I went back and assisted the other gunner back to this clearing or to an opening, a protective opening. And then I had to go back and get the dead pilot, and I carried him back to this opening. And then soon after that, the rescue helicopter, our sister ship, came in. But before I had to leave, we had some secret information, secret weapons on that helicopter. And it was always the gunner's job and responsibility. If in fact the event were to happen that we were to go down, our job was to destroy everything. We destroyed, or I had to go back and I destroyed the weapon system. I destroyed the radio system. I took all of our secret codes that were in a black metal case and had to bring them back. Went back to the helicopter and the rescue helicopter, and they said, we're full, we can't take any more, we can't take you. I said, not a problem, just get the hell out of here, excuse me, or just get out of here. And I had to stay on the ground until the next available rescue ship came, and it was a situation that I lived on a daily basis, and it was a situation that I'm glad the outcome was that it is. I still keep in contact with the brother of my deceased co-pilot, and he's most appreciative of that. I see him about once a year, him and the family. The family was so grateful for me because when I came back, I went to visit the family and told them exactly what had happened and so on. And gave him some kind of assurance that there was no pain involved in his passing, and there was no brutality. It was instant. He wouldn't even had known it. So they felt comfort in that, and they needed to hear that, and they appreciated that. There were many, many more missions. Like I said, I flew over 5,000 missions that were similar, not as drastic, but called for intense actions. Some of the missions, as I said, left an imprint in my mind, which actually assisted me in the rest of my life, decision making, my actions, my ideas, and what my expectations were as far as my responsibilities, what I had to do. Coming back from Vietnam like that and being hired on with the North Glen Police Department, it was this community and this police department that actually gave me a release of tension that helped me through my own problems. They never knew about it, but that's how nice this community was. That's how nice the police department was, that without their knowing, they helped me just by the way they were.
I just want to tell you from my heart, I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your service and dedication to our country, to our community of North Glen. You served with distinction, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing this time, with our community. And you honor, the future, police officers in their work. By doing so and being there, I think that also represents, our history, our dedication to the badge. And I thought that was so eloquent how you described. You never want to tarnish a badge.
That's
you
it.
want to, abide by that oath of office, and don't embarrass your community, your family, and your fellow officers. So, thank you so much.
You bet, Jimmy.
Okay.
I don't want to tarnish you. I don't want to. The badge. Everybody in blue is my brother, and I don't want to hurt them.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.